Thanks to Steve for the introduction, and thanks to Brian and the departmental leadership for inviting me to give a Grand Rounds talk. This is a real honor, and I'm really excited to tell you all about what we've been doing at iTech to strengthen laboratory systems, and also to give you a sales pitch so you will come join us. So some of the key questions I want us to explore in my talk have to do with defining what a system is, what do we call a laboratory system, what are systems within the laboratories themselves, and the challenges to those that we try to address in our work. What are the big challenges for medical laboratories globally? You know, many of us are focused on service delivery here in the States and North America, but what are some of the challenges for laboratories in service in resource-limited countries? What are the areas for opportunity to address some of those challenges? What can we do situated here in the university, given the capacities that we have to help address some of these challenges and make an impact? And then, again, like I said, this is a recruitment seminar too. I want you to join us. Just to orient some of you who may not be familiar, the International Training and Education Center for Health is a center within the Department of Global Health. It's among 6 centers there. And everything that the faculty and the staff do are focused on health workforce training, health system strengthening, and we also do some health informatics work. iTech's over many faculty and many staff, which I think now number over 600 globally, work in about 25 different countries. We have 13 country offices where we implement our projects, plus countries where we may not have local infrastructure that we do work through other mechanisms. Right now, my team, the Laboratory System Strengthening team at iTech, has projects in 3 countries, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we're doing in those places that touch upon the different areas of practice where my team works. Our team's approach, like Steve said, is to focus on improving laboratory governance, quality, and laboratory capacity towards improving evidence-based disease diagnosis, patient care and treatment, all for better disease detection and surveillance and better data for policy making. We also focus on facility-level biosafety and national biosafety issues. We do this through training and education programs and also through direct collaboration with ministries of health. We have many memorandums of understanding with different ministries and work directly with them on developing national strategic plans for laboratory services, policies, and so forth. So we really try to address laboratory system strengthening at all tiers of the laboratory system. Our team's areas of practice focus on 4 main areas that are all really supported through strong program management and monitoring and evaluation support we have at the center. Everything we do is grant funded, so having the strong grants management, program management support is really essential to help us implement these activities. The first area we focus on is this leadership and management program that we developed, which I'll tell you more about, for laboratory supervisors. We also do in-service laboratory quality management training and mentorship. We work directly with ministries around government advocacy, policy development, strategic planning, and we're also helping governments address issues related to assuring the quality of diagnostic testing. We have a number of partners that we work with in this work that are listed below, one of which is a neighbor of ours, Bloodworks Northwest, where we have some of our scope of work in Cote d'Ivoire is focusing on supporting the blood safety and supply there. So let me start by defining what we call a laboratory system and what's needed to improve laboratory systems in resource-limited countries. So just to orient ourselves, we know that the U.S. health laboratory system is structured in a tiered fashion with federal laboratories at the top, state public health laboratories in the middle, and then local laboratories at the lower levels. And this system is is well structured and is highly regulated, which is one of the things that allows the system to work well in our country. We have laws and regulations that govern lab practice, and we have policies in place within our own networks to facilitate service delivery and facilitate quality. We know that laboratories are an integral part of the health system, so all the way from basic level testing at health centers through primary hospitals up to referral centers, reference laboratories, and a national reference laboratory. Health data flows from the bottom. Ideally, national laboratory systems are organized in this tiered fashion where you have very clear linkages between labs for specimen referral, support, and whatnot. However, this is an area that's really lacking in a lot of countries. There's no governance for this, and laboratories tend to work in isolation. As I said, many laboratories lack that regulatory framework to enforce quality, enforce service delivery. You know, for example, there's often no mechanisms to refer specimens for more complicated testing. So like in Cambodia, for example, where we're working, there's only 5 laboratories in the whole country that can do conventional microbiology testing. But the mechanism to refer specimens out to another laboratory that could just really isn't there. So it means that clinicians just treat patients, you know, based on clinical diagnosis and without that laboratory data, which of course, as you can imagine, could lead to antimicrobial resistance and so forth. So this is a big problem. The role of a laboratory system is many things. First and foremost, it's disease detection, surveillance, and response. The system also influences public health policy to effectively with the data that it produces. Laboratories educate the public, they promote cooperation within the health system, particularly in times of outbreak investigation, and they share information related to their practices. So it's a community of practice. Laboratories ideally work collectively to solve problems. There's, again, through this community of practice, can address issues related to reagents or testing services. Laboratories are a critical piece of one of the 6 health system building blocks as defined by WHO. They fall under the medicines and technologies category. And people really, human resources are the center of all of that. They hold these building blocks together. At iTech, we focus on that human resource, the human resources element of health system strengthening, and everything we do is focused at that level. We have been witness to what happens when health systems are weak and laboratories are ill-equipped in terms of capacity to investigate an outbreak. The recent epidemic of Ebola really illuminated this issue of laboratory capacity in West Africa, and it remains an example to keep in mind. This is just a picture of a laboratory, the National Reference Laboratory in Kinshasa, Congo, that I visited in 2009. This is the reference lab for all the viral hemorrhagic fevers. And this is the capacity that the entire country and that entire section of Africa had to diagnose viral hemorrhagic fevers. And it's pretty indicative of what the situation is across Africa. So now to bring it down at a systems level to the laboratory, when we think about what's a system within the lab, from every part of the testing process, from patient sample collection to reporting, every single step in this process is a system. And you know, every single element of this needs to be working properly in order for you to get an accurate result in a timely manner and in a reliable way to the clinicians. At the core of all of that, again, is people. And if people don't know the right things to do when they should be doing them, and in the steps they should be doing them, they're going to get it wrong. So as I said, the expectation of the laboratory is that they produce reliable, accurate, and timely results. This is the laboratory's product. The expectations when you walk into a doctor's office is that the tests that they order are going to be correct every time. But this isn't always the case in resource-limited countries, and for a number of reasons. Some of the key elements to getting accurate, timely, and reliable results have to do with the infrastructure that's built around this, that's part of the system that the laboratory itself is in. And that means having appropriate national and local organizational capacity to oversee lab practice and to support it. This means having a focal point at the national level to oversee laboratory practice, both in the public and private sectors. This means having laws and regulations that govern quality, that where there's, because this national focal point has the authority to enforce quality, can tie quality to licensure, and ensure that labs that are open for business are producing quality results. We know this is a big challenge. For example, in Cambodia, where we're working, only 13 of the private laboratories, of the many private laboratories that are open for business, are only 13 of them are licensed to practice. There's no linkages between quality and licensure. It's more of a system of who you know and who you've paid off to be able to be open. The other big issue that I'll talk more about is the ability to lead and manage laboratories to national and international standards. Many laboratory directors have been promoted to their positions because of their seniority or their technical capacity, but not necessarily because they have particularly any leadership skills or know how to manage people. And they certainly, many of them don't understand what the international standard means, the ISO 15189. And they don't have any national quality standard of their own to meet, unlike here in the US. The other key issue is having an educated workforce, having pre-service education programs that are devised to address the needs of the day, that teach quality assurance in the curriculum. So when people graduate, they go on in service, that they know what the quality assurance cycle looks like, and they know what to do when there's a problem. And then having in-service professional development opportunities. There's a complete lack of career advancement for laboratory technologists and laboratory professionals in a lot of resource-limited countries. So that's a big challenge too, and having access to learning. Having access to quality equipment and reagents is an obvious one for resource-limited countries, but money's not everything. And the management of those equipment and reagents is a critical piece of that. Also, another challenge is the ability to manage and share information. So here we take for granted, well-designed laboratory information systems that where one can access a piece of data, send it, the clinician can retrieve it right without having to ever go to the laboratory. And then that data is sent up the chain to the national level where policy making is done. There just is a real inability to do that in many countries that are still using paper-based systems. So this is our image of a high-functioning medical laboratory, and we expect this facility to be producing accurate, reliable, and timely results. In many resource-limited countries, the picture looks more like this, where you've got limited resources, broken equipment, a lack of human resources, poor infrastructure, inability to ensure the quality of your reagents, and so forth, like the things I just said. So how can we expect accurate, timely, and reliable results to come from a place that looks like this? And what I would argue is that you can, it takes time. So what are the challenges and what are the opportunities to address these challenges and improve laboratory quality and capacity? I really group them in 7 key areas, and they have to do with leadership and governance, financing, health workforce development, information management, medical products and technology, service delivery, and quality and safety. And I'm not going to read each of these, but you can see here that in every single bin here, it takes human resources that know what they should be doing, have the personal leadership skills to do something about them, and act on those things. Many of these challenges are management challenges, and as I said, it takes strong leadership to be able to address those. Now, what are some of the consequences that we see in resource-limited countries of the poor quality of testing coming from labs? Well, it really kickstarts this cycle of poor quality. When you have poor quality lab testing, clinicians stop using the lab. They don't trust the lab results because they don't match their clinical diagnosis. That means that laboratory data is not being used to inform clinical decision-making, and then in turn health policy suffers and no investments are made in laboratories. So it feeds this cycle of poor lab quality. And our approach to address this cycle, stopping this cycle, is to address this issue of lab quality. And so we tackle this problem right there. We do that through targeting lab managers, people working at the bench to teach them quality management. We work with ministries of health on policy, trying to really address these problems at all tiers of the lab system. So what are some of the challenges we know for lab managers now that we know that a laboratory is a human-driven system? We know there's inadequate financial resources they have to deal with. They've got competing priorities all the time. And actually, these aren't always challenges for resource-limited countries. They're here too. Often, laboratories that we work with have no other network support. There's really absent linkages between labs. Lab directors don't know each other. There's no professional associations where they feel comfortable contacting each other with questions. They have difficulties assuring the quality of reagents, procurement challenges, limited HR capacity, and high staff turnover because of low wages, staff competency and work ethic because of low wages, because of just a lack of a systemic lack of care about the work and the profession, and inadequate training and infrastructure. But none of these challenges can be addressed without strong leadership. So what does this mean for resource-limited countries in terms of laboratory practice? It means that they start at a disadvantage towards achieving lab quality and having the capacity to deal with outbreaks. We take the approach that human resources development is a sustainable way to improve lab quality. It's not just about throwing a new piece of equipment into the laboratory and expecting it to work great in 5 years. It's not just about giving a laboratory more money if there's no system in place to manage that money appropriately. So what we have decided to do, and based on feedback from others around the world, is to develop a leadership and management program for lab directors. Laboratories need technical expertise plus effective management to succeed. Having all the tools is just really not enough, as I said. Leaders and managers do different things in any organization, whether you're working at Boeing or you're working at a laboratory. And particularly in a laboratory, in a resource-limited setting, you don't have the luxury of having multiple people who can handle these subtasks. Often it falls to one person. So developing the competency in somebody who's in a leadership position to do these range of activities is really critical. Many of these laboratories do have quality assurance officers, and they have been also enrolled in our programs. They're another cadre of people that need extra development, extra professional development. So there's been a call for more training of laboratory directors, and from around the world. WHO held a meeting of stakeholders on this in 2011. There's been clear competency guidelines developed by Association for Public Health Laboratories in the last few years, and a number of papers that have been published calling for this. We heard that call for a program to address this, and we did just that in 2013. We worked together with the World Health Organization in the Eastern Mediterranean region, and we developed a professional certificate program. This is a certificate program that's been running for 3 years now, with 2 cohorts that I'll tell you a bit about in a minute. The target audience are people in a supervisory position, both in the public and private sectors and with a global focus. We developed a curriculum that was based on core competencies that every laboratory director should have, regardless of what facility that they're working in. And we designed it to be 9 months long and blended learning, which means some face-to-face sessions, but mostly then online. They take classes, but they also have to complete a laboratory improvement project, which we called a capstone project. The whole program itself was pass-fail. The faculty came from the University of Washington and the global laboratory practice community, colleagues from CDC and elsewhere. We developed it to be modular and customizable. So if a country wanted to implement this with some of their laboratory directors, and there was a particular topic in our program that they'd had already, we can swap it out and put something else in because it's online and modular. And all of the online curriculum was built in Canvas, which is the University of Washington's learning management system. And every single week there's discussions going on, there's lectures people have to watch, videos people have to watch, assignments they have to complete, and every single week they're having to do something for about 9 months. So it's a very vigorous program. It's also mentored. So in addition to the support they get from faculty here at the UW, they're also mentored by someone who's local to them in the same time zone so that they can call them up, ask questions. That mentor helps them out on this capstone project, and they're a local resource for them. So these are some of the core competencies that we wanted them to develop, and all around these issues of leadership and management. How to manage people, how to manage budgets, how to do strategic planning, strategic visioning, policy development, and so forth. So we built the curriculum around this. The learning goals were to be able to apply leadership traits and management skills, be able to communicate with stakeholders, particularly how to use laboratory information to advocate for resources, how to work with your staff to monitor quality in the laboratory and convey quality to decision makers, how to implement a quality management system, how can they encourage their staff to do the right thing when there's no law or regulation telling them they have to do it, how they can teaching them how to understand the international standard for medical lab quality, and implement that in a stepwise fashion. And then we also wanted them to understand how to implement appropriately diagnostic technologies, which is a big problem there. In a lot of resource-limited countries where we work, oftentimes laboratory directors are in this kind of a receiver type of position where they're given equipment, they're given reagents and just told to use them without ever having a seat at the table in terms of how those decisions are made, how those things are chosen for them. And so they often, just don't know what to do. So building up their competency to be able to have a seat at that table, have a discussion about what's right for their laboratory, what's going to be sustainable long term, and so forth. And then the last class is around analyzing laboratory information. So the program, the 9-month program, has 4 key elements. The first is a program orientation and an in-person course on quality management. Then they go back to their home laboratories and they do a laboratory audit. So we teach them how to do a laboratory audit. Then they use that, they do a gap analysis on that audit, and they develop their capstone project based on the gaps that they find there. Then they start the online curriculum. They take laboratory leadership, they take laboratory management, how to implement diagnostic technology appropriately, and how to communicate, analyze and communicate laboratory information. They take those 4 core classes, all the while they're completing these assignments with their capstone project. And then after about 8 months, we bring them together again, and they have to present their projects, and they have to write a 25-page paper on it with citations. And then they get a certificate from ITEC. I mentioned Canvas already. For a lot of people that have taken this program, this was the first time they ever did any kind of e-learning. So in our Canvas site, we built in tutorials and had kind of virtual office hours to teach people how to do this. But uptake was really great, and our graduation rate has been excellent. We've had a 90% graduation rate for a 9-month program, which is really great for 2 classes. The capstone project is a really unique part of this. It's the applied piece of this whole program. It's individualized, so every single lab director is to design this based on the needs of their laboratory, and they must recruit their lab staff to help them complete it. It's not just an individualized project or a personal leadership journey. It's the true application of what they're learning in the online classroom in their labs, and they've got to motivate their staff and get their staff on board to get this done. So who are the participants? We had to have some criteria for selecting folks. They should be mid-career or senior managers or directors of a medical laboratory or public health laboratory. Ideally, they would have a bachelor's degree, although that's not always the case. In many countries where we work, oftentimes lab directors just have an MLT. As I said, they've ascended to that position through seniority. And often those degrees aren't even available to them in the country. They should have some years of experience working on the bench, and then at least 2 years in a supervisory role. And they have to fill out an application and all of that. The mentors in this program we recruit through our network of colleagues in the countries and the region. These should be senior level scientists with experience in lab management, have a graduate level degree, be a comfortable computer user, and available for regular phone calls with their mentees. This is just showing our 2 graduating classes so far. In our first year, we had 14 people from the Middle East and North Africa, and then last year we graduated 17 people from Zambia, and this year we're running it in Zambia, and we've brought in the quality assurance officers this time. And so it's been a pretty successful program. I want to play a video for you now of one of our graduates talking about her experience.
When I was first told that I've been enrolled in the Laboratory Leadership and Management Program with the University of Washington, I wasn't sure what to expect because it was the first time that I was going to participate in an online program. So when the program finally started, I think what I experienced is something that exceeded my expectation. It is a very nice course. It is very informative, very educative, and I must say that it's something that really does change you as an individual in terms of improving the skills that you have as a lab manager. And there are so many things that I didn't know that I'll be able to benefit from this particular training, but I did. It was very informative, and the way the program has been designed, the staff are very helpful. And I think as a result of being part of this program, my laboratory will never be the same again, because the information that I was learning is something that I did not feel that was only for me as the participant for that particular program. I was so excited, and I made it as part of our weekly programs, our weekly meetings, where I would sit with all the staff. I would share some of the materials that we have been learning. And the staff, I think, were equally interested and were motivated by some of the lessons that we are having, and as a result of that, I think the morale and the mood of the lab just changed. Everyone was eager to participate, not only in the capstone or the capstone project part of the training, but they were equally interested in fulfilling the other parts of the quality management system. And I think as a result of that, I can say that the training really did improve the performance of the lab. In addition, I think the training has made me a more effective leader and manager of the TB lab, in that before I started, I think I had very little information on how to be an effective leader, how to be a manager, but from what I read, I think what we learned, a lot has changed about the way that I'm able to run the laboratory now. One aspect I think that has been so profound with me during the training was the issue of listening skills. You see, as a leader, usually you think that when you go to meetings, you have to talk and let the other people listen to you. But what I learned was that you must be more of a listener and less of somebody who talks. And as a result of that, I always find myself remembering what I learned in the training and always trying to improve my listening skills, my communication skills. And I think I've seen that as a result of that, most of the people most of the staff from the department are able to give me what their opinion is, and they're able to bring out their opinion when they are uncomfortable about a particular issue. And because of this training that I received, I think I feel more empowered to take on the leadership issues. And some of the things that come right to my mind are issues to do with conflict management. Sometimes I would find myself in a situation where the conflict could be directly with maybe some of the decisions I've taken as a leader, but sometimes it's also to do with between staff members. And previously, I wouldn't really know how to address those particular conflicts, what approach to take. Sometimes I feel like I may hurt somebody's feelings, but I think from the training, we were equipped with knowledge on how you can address the challenges that arise in the department. And I think the most important question for me, the most important information was that conflicts will be there, but it's how we address those particular conflicts. And I really did appreciate that particular aspect. And overall, I think the training for me has changed. There's been what I can say paradigm shift from within me. It has transformed me. It has changed me, my thinking, and the way that I'm able to run a department, the way I'm able to run the unit, the lab. I think I know what I'm supposed to do as a leader. I know what I'm supposed to do as a manager. And because of that, it's the program that I would recommend to other participants who might be interested in being able to be part of this training. You will never be the same again. Even the way that you talk before people, the way that you interact with your colleagues, the way that you look at issues, really, I think it really does make a difference. And at the end of it all, I think people who even come to my lab are able to see the difference of the way things were run before and the way things are being run now. And the impact hasn't only been within myself, but also within the lab. I think everybody has benefited as a lab from the training program, not as an individual, but as a lab. And I think the University of Washington has to keep up the good work that they are doing.
That's Lutanella talking about her experience. It's a program that we very much would like to bring to North American audiences. So far, it's been entirely grant funded. As I said, we've implemented this with 2 classes, and we've been in discussions with the Department of Global Health, and would like to have some discussions with Lab Medicine about how we make this a program we can offer to more people. So. So that's what we've been doing to try to address lab management. And next I want to talk about what we're doing at the next level down and trying to train people at the bench level how to monitor quality in the laboratory. I'm going to use an example from work that we're doing in Cambodia. Cambodia is a particularly unique country in terms of their challenges in human resources there. Because of the Khmer Rouge genocide in the 70s, they killed pretty much all of the intellectuals and teachers in the country. And so most of the population is under the age of 40. And most of the people in positions of leadership and directing health facilities, let's just say, may not have the experience that you would expect them to have, or the education you expect them to have. So it's a particularly unique country in terms of addressing education. So one of the ways that we have tried to do that is implement a really intensive mentoring program at the laboratory technologist level. Our project's goal here is to improve lab operations for enhanced disease detection, surveillance, and biosecurity through improving quality assurance. Our target facilities were tertiary level hospitals and national referral laboratories, hospital laboratories. And trying to get these labs to implement a quality management system that's in line with ISO 15189. This is just a slide that demonstrates how poor the quality of testing was in Cambodia when we started. There have been some incremental improvements since we've worked there the past few years. But basically what this shows, and the table on the right shows proficiency testing scores in 4 different sections of these laboratories. Each line represents a lab, and the ones that are starred are ITEX facilities, are supported facilities. And you can see that while they had been doing fine in microbiology and serology, the accuracy of their testing in biochemistry and hematology was just absolutely terrible. And then the other point I wanted to emphasize is that the testing menus are quite small, they're quite limited. That's a picture of the test menu from one of our facilities, where basically you can run just a handful of tests for patients. That's what the doctors have to offer. So even given that, even if you have a small testing menu, it's important to get it right, and they were not doing that. This shows a map of where our sites were. The tertiary level hospitals are red crosses there, and they're encircled in red. These represent major population centers. These hospitals have a large service area. So we're getting a good number of the Cambodian population through this work. Our approach was to utilize a new tool that the WHO developed in 2013. They developed this laboratory quality stepwise implementation tool that's basically a stepwise action plan with a set of activities, about 465 activities, that if you were to accomplish each of those, you would be ready to apply for accreditation to ISO 15189. So it's a real tool for lab managers to use and quality assurance officers to use to implement a QMS. The WHO and the Royal Tropical Institute, who helped them develop this, broke it down into 4 phases, each phase with an increasing level of complexity. And so we, through the training of our mentors and then the mentors going out into the field, we took those labs through those 4 phases to implement a QMS. Our mentoring process was to take a subset of activities. Let's say from phase 1, we would take 30 activities, and the entire mentor team would work on those activities for the whole duration of their rotation. So they'd spend 1 week in one laboratory, move to another laboratory, spend 1 week there, and then to the 3rd lab. And in each laboratory, work through that same set of activities. So all 12 of our laboratories were moving to implement a QMS at the same time, and which also means they got to share files, they got to share information. So implementation was able to happen more rapidly, especially around building a documentation system, SOPs and so forth. So that's how we were able to break it down even more. We provided a lot of support from Seattle. We were over there in country about every 2 months, providing technical assistance on the phone and doing trainings. We would also pull we'd pull the lab manager, the quality assurance officer, and the biosafety officer together for a meeting about QMS implementation about every quarter. Pull them together, review progress. We'd talk about what the next steps are, talk about the questions, help them understand what the ISO standard is looking for, and so forth. And so the mentors really developed a very strong relationship with the staff, and I think that's a really critical piece to implementing change and implementing quality in a lot of these countries, is if they have someone who's there that they can feel vulnerable with, that they can ask questions to, and not feel stupid. This is just showing our progress over time, implementing these 4 phases of QMS implementation. When our project finished in 2016, we had just started phase 4. We hadn't gotten all the way through it yet, but that project has now restarted with new funding from the Defense Department, and we need to go back and take a look and see with an audit where those labs are right now. We also did this in Laos in 5 sites, and unfortunately that work's not continuing right now, but it's also an area where we had started this process. So I wanted to mention another problem that we see in our labs, which is the inability to have standardized data collection, to collect data in an accurate manner in a standardized fashion, and distribute it and then have access to it. A lot of these laboratories use paper-based systems. People's handwriting are difficult to read. You can't do any kind of epidemiological analysis on it. You have to transform it all into spreadsheets and such. So this remains a big problem, and I know our informatics group at iTech is trying to address this through implementation of open source LIS systems, and it's another area where I think that our 2 departments could collaborate a lot. The other 2 areas that my team works on have to do with the quality assurance of diagnostic testing, specifically around some work we're doing in Côte d'Ivoire with point-of-care tests, and then some other work that we do in Côte d'Ivoire around policy development, advocacy, and strategic planning. Côte d'Ivoire, this particular project is funded by CDC PEPFAR. Côte d'Ivoire's got a significant HIV burden in certain districts in the adult population, and that's really where our focus has been because of the PEPFAR funding. Our project's goals have to do with HIV diagnosis, patient management, patient monitoring through viral load monitoring. And every single one of these UN AIDS 90-90-90 goals has a laboratory component of it. And ITEC and our project is responsible for helping the Ministry of Health address laboratory service delivery and the quality assurance of point-of-care testing done at almost 3,000 testing sites that at a decentralized level across the country. Côte d'Ivoire has a tiered lab system, so there's 9 reference laboratories, including the National Blood Transfusion Service, 77 secondary level labs at the regional level, including some blood banks, 100 basic laboratories, and as I said, about 3,000 now point-of-care testing sites that are at the village community level, and often that are staffed by community-level volunteers or healthcare workers, not trained healthcare professionals. As I said, our project goal is more focused on making an impact in HIV diagnosis and patient care and treatment. So those are the areas where we direct our work. Our project's got six broad objectives. They have to do with strengthening national policies and guidelines, trying to support biosafety and biosecurity practices at the laboratory level, teaching laboratory quality management to the staff, and trying to teach lab managers and supervisors how to do their jobs best. We're targeted, we've been asked to help implement an electronic lab information system throughout our target sites and manage that, and also support blood safety and supply issues across the country. And for that, as I mentioned, we've been working with BloodWorks Northwest, who've been great collaborators. Our desired outcomes, as I said, have to do with trying to reduce the HIV burden, trying to detect more patients, more people that are HIV positive, trying to improve the accuracy of diagnostic testing and reduce misdiagnosis. This is a picture of one of the great outcomes of our first year, which we just closed the books on that at the end of September. We helped the country develop their next national laboratory strategic plan, which will be good for the next 3 years. So it's an example of some of the policy and planning work that we're doing there. This graph shows the proficiency testing scores across the board in Côte d'Ivoire. Each bar represents a different PEPFAR partner that's been managing a certain number of sites. And what the numbers at the top show is the percent of labs that are reaching 100% accuracy. So, only 81% of these labs scored 100% on a HIV rapid test, proficiency test. So there's definitely a need to improve the accuracy of HIV rapid testing. And you can see here the National Blood Transfusion Centers actually only got 25% accuracy, which is a big concern, obviously. But all of this taken into consideration, though, point of care tests, when we think about implementing diagnostic technology to try to address some of these problems and reach far-flung places, reach the population with lower complexity tests, we have to keep in mind that it's not just as simple as implementing a dipstick-like test and walking away and hitting play and walking away. It really requires a framework of regulation, of quality assurance. These point-of-care testing sites have got to be linked to hubs, laboratory hubs, that help oversee quality assurance, where there's supportive supervision of those sites, where they're actually responsible for monitoring quality in those places and making sure healthcare workers know what the right thing is to do. So I know a lot of people tend to think, oh, point-of-care diagnostics, that's the solution for resource-limited countries, but it's with a word of caution. This is just some pictures of some recent trainings that my team did in July in Côte d'Ivoire, trying to train people on the new guidelines for HIV rapid testing and protocols. We're trying to implement a campaign there in Côte d'Ivoire to train healthcare workers, community-level healthcare workers, about quality assurance. So in the laboratory, we know about QMS, we know about quality management, and you hear about it. But in a lot of these places where there's decentralized testing and there's people that haven't had formal training in quality assurance, they just haven't had that exposure. So we're trying to implement this kind of a public health campaign, educational campaign for them that has to do with the quality assurance cycle. So that's another thing that we're doing. So as I wrap up here, I want to leave some time for questions. I've told you a lot about what we do at iTech to try to strengthen laboratory systems. And here comes the sales pitch I told you that I wanted to collaborate more with the department. I think that right now is a really wonderful opportunity for us to do just that. I would love to get folks in lab medicine more involved in the work we do. I think that bringing your expertise to what we do globally would be a wonderful asset. I think the golden opportunity is this population health initiative. This is a 25-year vision to improve interdepartmental collaboration across the UW to address population health challenges. Trying to form new collaborations and new educational opportunities. And I think this could be a great opportunity for us. The concept I want to pitch is a global laboratory medicine program. By that I mean taking what we do at the international level and really having a solid connection to what we do here at the local level, what all of you do here. So this concept of local to global to local again. How can we bring in people who are working in service here in lab medicine and all of your technical expertise into what we're doing globally? How do we bring some approaches that we have implemented in resource-limited countries that work back here and maybe use them in rural settings in the United States? Because I think there's actually an opportunity for some interesting exchange there. There's been some really innovative things being done globally that I think could be particularly interesting here in the US. So that's on the laboratory system strengthening piece. Then I think there's an opportunity to collaborate on the educational side, both pre-service and in-service. So we have the certificate program in laboratory leadership and management. We could collaborate more to bring that under one umbrella as an educational offering, not just for global audiences, but for North American audiences too. We've been talking about how that might even be one track within a master's program for lab managers, which is another opportunity. On the pre-service side, I think there's the obvious, working together on courses, but also exploring global study opportunities. So global study both for folks that are in school, but then in service as well. We have a lot of opportunities where people who were enabled to could come to one of our project sites, do a training with us, work in a laboratory for a couple weeks, and then go back. So that's another opportunity. And then the fourth pillar being this concept of an innovation incubator where we can look at questions, we can look at big challenges that some of the labs are having and think about them as platforms to try out new methodologies, new technologies, new approaches. So that was my sales pitch. And anybody interested, please come talk to me. I would love to explore this more. I think the time is ripe at the UW for something like this. So in closing, let me just acknowledge my team. There's about 23 staff that work on these projects right now, and all of them work really hard, both here in Seattle and abroad, and all the programmatic staff that support this. It takes a lot of work on the financial and operations side of things to get work done overseas. It really blows my mind as I come from a technical background. I want to thank all the faculty that have been part of the certificate program. The e-learning team at the Department of Global Health they're just wizards. They're amazing. All the ministries of health we worked with, partner labs and so forth. Dr. Robert Martin, who is my predecessor, who is now Professor Emeritus, really paved the way for this kind of work at iTech. We look forward to growing the program after him now. Ann Downer and the department leadership, and then all the funding that's supported the work that we've done, which has been from a number of U.S. agencies, Department of Defense, Health and Human Services, and so forth. So with that, I'll take some questions.
So thank you for your talk. My concern is sort of looking forward as we have potentially changing national interests and investment in foreign health systems. Where do you see future support for this work coming from?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, a lot of investments in global health have come from the U.S. government. It's on pretty shaky ground, particularly ones that reside from the executive branch like PEPFAR. I do have hope that our Congress, and there are indications that our Congress will continue to support global health investments through the CDC and through those kinds of mechanisms. I also think the Defense Department will remain very interested in supporting global health work. It's soft power, it's strategic interests, and I can see that continuing. But it is a great point, and it does give you pause to think how many billions of dollars have been spent building up the health systems of other countries. I don't think it's unreasonable when a country approaches middle income status to start asking for some more investment on their side. I think that's perfectly reasonable. I think what we have to do is do a better job at building in that sustainability piece and making them more empowered, having them have a seat at the table right at the get-go, so that it's not just, okay, here you go and run things on your own now. But I think we have to coach them along in that. And managing our own expectations, Zambia is, not gonna, it doesn't need an infrastructure like we have here in the US. It needs an infrastructure that's right-sized for them.
Thanks. I don't mean to be pessimistic.
Yeah, no, I don't. I think it's reasonable.
I have a question also.
Yes,
yes, thank you for inspiring but challenging talk, I would say. One of my questions is how you think we might integrate essentially people coming from under-resourced areas to the curriculum that exists already within the department. We have master's programs, we have undergraduate MLS programs. One of the ways to capitalize on those resources without needing a lot of extra resources is if we could bring folks in who would join the existing program and curriculum within the department. Is that something that you think is feasible?
Well, I mean, the initial challenge there is tuition, right? How would we do that? And then the second would be, how to ensure that they had they had fundamentals, an education in the fundamentals, that they had, cell biology and biochemistry and all the basic sciences, and making sure that they had that to start with. But yeah, I think it's doable. I think we could look at starting small. We have a lot of twinning partnerships. ITech has a lot of twinning partnerships with universities overseas, and that could be an initial mechanism. Since students are already matriculated there, maybe there's a way to piggyback on that initially.
And related to that, do you know if the President's Global Initiative includes, in fact, things like subsidies for tuition or support for the departments that want to develop these programs?
That's a great question. It should. I think the vision is still forming. I think they're trying to figure out what this means, and I think we need to talk to them about it. Go to them with these ideas. Go to them with these questions. I know that there's a specific line item in there about faculty development and scholarship, but I haven't seen anything particularly related to students yet.
I just wanted to add one more comment. I think that at this stage, thinking about the resources it will take to move one person to come here in the States and get the education as opposed to getting one of us here, one of the faculty at UW going over there. I sense that with the resources we have at hand for that, it's going to be much more beneficial to have the other way around. And maybe with some study tours. Yeah.
Thank you for your talk. Looking at the international standards and the current global standards of laboratories around the globe, do you think that an ISO 15189 standard is really the goal for all laboratories?
No. No, I don't. I don't think it's realistic at all. I think funders are pushing for it because it's the thing that they can reach to, but I think we should be working with ministries of health to develop their own national quality standard and base quality on performance indicators from the lab. You know, base it on how accurate your test results are. How well are you? How well is the laboratory producing information? And that needs to be measured in a different way. Not necessarily in a different way, in a context appropriate way.
The late Director General of the World Health Organization, Jung-Wook Lee, famously said that the most important health problem in the world is the lack of the rule of law. You know, and as that imposes on quality systems, the inability just to enforce simple rules in certain countries, especially like Cambodia, which you mentioned. You know, they attempted to test all their graduating medical students a year ago, and most of them failed, and the president literally declared over the dean's head that we will graduate all these medical students who had failed all their graduating tests. I mean, this sort of a problem, you know, I have served on the WHO expert committee in my field, on the South Pacific Commission. I was on the original PEPFAR board for CDC. You know, you watch these things happen again and again and again.
Yeah, I know, it's leadership. It's the leadership. Maybe they should take our class. Thank you.